So this week's assignment was to create an image that embraces creativity, and we've asked you to do that two different ways. First way, I wanted you to take an image or an idea that was very cliche and try and do something creative or different with that. And then the second part of the assignment was to create an abstract photograph. And remember, the biggest thing about abstraction is you are simply cutting off access to external detail, and in doing so, you kind of confuse the viewer into having to figure out what they are actually creating. So, with that being said, I'm going to take a look at your images. It's probably going to be a little bit quicker critique and feedback here because one of the things I do want to emphasize with creativity is we have this fear around judgment, and oftentimes this is the obstacle to it. So I'm going to try to be non-judgmental here in your images, and you'll also notice in your grades it's really going to be a pass or fail situation here, or a 100 or a 0, unless there's something minor that we would just take a little bit off for here. So with that being said, let's get to work. So first off, we have Katie's images. So for her cliched image, she talks about portraits and how oftentimes clothing or expressions or whatever sort of forces us to have an opinion about the sitter, meaning the person in the portrait. So she's taken a picture of her friend, done so with the light behind it, so there certainly is a whole bunch of mystery about this person. We can't really see his face, and we really only see maybe some small details on the sweatshirt there. So I think this is a great idea. I really like the approach. Again, the traditional way to take a portrait would be to show someone's face. So in not doing so here, makes this image very enigmatic, and certainly having the light coming in the back and the lens flares really works for me. And then your abstract image, maybe we would have thought about cutting off a little bit more of that mug, and then that kind of becomes that much more abstract. But gosh, that's just a really small thing. And again, beautiful image, and I'd like the use of negative space here. I mean, we've talked about this a bunch, but you can see how just a clean, simple image can oftentimes be very appealing because we're drawn to the very graphic or form-based nature of this image. And next up we have Olivia's images. And here's her image that breaks cliche. She's got a little spider on a mason jar. Again, I think this works. If we were to think of our cliched National Geographic images of spiders, they tend to look very threatening, very, like big and mean, and oftentimes we see the face that sort of has those claws or whatever on it. So here it seems relatively harmless, and in some ways it feels very organic how it just kind of blends into the mason jar with that same coloring to its skin. So that certainly works for me. And then the abstraction here, really, really love this abstraction. It's more about a photo of textures than it is about anything. And I think that, it takes a second or two for you to kind of really get in and look closely at it and realize that this is someone's skin, and I'm presuming it's, probably someone's hand. And I like the fact that you've taken the color out of it, which is also added to that abstraction, that, we don't have that additional element to, give us a good idea about what it is. So nice job with this assignment, Olivia. So next up we have Samantha's image. And I almost feel like, Samantha, this image definitely works for both your abstraction and for your image that breaks cliche. you submitted this shot, and boy, that really looks cliche to me. Feel like that's your typical fall pumpkin kind of shot. And in your reflection, you talk about this. This is the cliche type of shot. So I'm assuming this is the one you want to go with. And certainly, having your focus on the stem and sort of the texture in the stem certainly is something that we're not used to with pumpkins. And then also, in many ways, it's an abstraction. Although, if I was going to go to abstraction, I might even consider zooming in a little bit closer. So, we're like that. Although, as we do zoom in a little closer, it looks like you're just a teeny bit out of focus here. So, certainly make sure that your focus is where it needs to be for your images. So, nice job with this. I really like the perspective and vantage point on this image. I just think in terms of abstraction, perhaps maybe you could do just a little bit better job with that. So look forward to seeing your work next week. And next up we have Clarice's images. So we've got her first image. It's a picture of a book, and certainly we see lots of books on bookshelves. So having this perspective really works. And I also like the fact that you sort of break up the pattern of vertical lines with the words, what looks like girl boss here. So I think that really works. And then certainly the sort of tattered parts of the cable here certainly tend to be very abstract. You've really cut off the external context of this photo, so we don't really know what it is. But it, again, forces us, like some of these other shots that we've looked at, it really forces us to look at the texture that's going on in here. And this picture then becomes a study in form, texture, pattern, all of those stuff. And in many ways is certainly very appealing from that perspective. Clarice, the one thing here in this assignment, you've submitted it as a Word document. Please make sure when I say submit as a Word document, you do it as a Word document, but when I say submit separately, which this was the case in this assignment here, I want you to submit your images separate from that Word document, because I can't go in and take a look at all the settings in it in Photoshop. So please do that. I do know we've got the midterm coming up, which in midterm for everybody, you actually are going to embed your images into the Photoshop, into the Word document. But in the future, down the road here, we're going to be doing lots of stuff where I will want you to submit the image separately. So please make sure you do that. Thanks. So next up we have Genesis images, and first one is shot of the sky, and I think this is great. What I really love is, maybe the tendency would have been to just kind of go in and shoot the sky, but I love the fact that you've added just a little bit of detail and sort of put them all in the corners just to kind of give us a hint or a clue as to where the location of this might be. The one thing I might consider here is just bringing out a little bit more detail in the clouds, and I'll show you how to do that right here. So I'm going to bring in my adjustments panel, and then I'm going to do a levels adjustment, and curves adjustment, and then I can just pick the curve, and basically what the curve is doing is manipulating the tones in the different parts of the photo. So when I'm grabbing it in the middle here, I'm making the middles darker or lighter by moving it respectively up or down. What I want to grab is sort of these blues, which are about halfway between light and dark, and I'm just going to pull those blues down a little bit, and notice how the blues in the sky change, whereas everything else kind of stays the same, and I can even sort of modify that. It's a teeny little thing here, and if we bring our curves pane in, we can see before and after. It's subtle. Maybe even bring this down a little bit more. Actually, just kind of playing around with it. And, this is what you've got to do with a lot of these tools in Photoshop, is just kind of play around with them a little bit and see what you can get. I am getting sort of a strange effect here in the clouds. So perhaps, when you start getting something like that, it's almost time to go back and start from scratch. And we'll do another approach to this. I'm going to do a levels adjustment. And in this case, I'm just going to change the blending mode up to, let's bring this up so you guys can see it. Change the blending mode to multiply. And that actually helps it a little bit, although again, I'm kind of getting some of this weird effect in the clouds, which if that's the case, we can just take the paintbrush, which is right underneath there. And because I've got a white mask on that, I'm going to go to a black paintbrush, and that'll just paint that adjustment off in these areas of the cloud where it's kind of starting to go weird. And you can see in my pane there then where the areas were that I painted it off. So a little tweak to this, not a big deal, but certainly just brings out a little bit more of the texture in the sky there. And then our abstract image, yeah, you don't show the whole tree, which certainly lends itself to abstraction. Again, maybe I'm getting even closer in this shot and doing something like this. That, then it almost feels like, okay, this could almost be some kind of animal's lips or snout or, a tree or whatever. Whereas, when you were a little bit farther away, I did have the context of the leaf and some other stuff there. So I kind of knew it was a branch. But again, I think you've got the idea there. So I'll look forward to your midterm submission here. So next up we have Tori's work, and for his first submission, to break cliche here, he's just kind of got a random image of all kinds of stuff that a student would experience as they're kind of cramming for their day, and juxtaposing sort of the Netflix thing in the background versus the more academic book in the foreground there. So again, works for me. And then your abstraction, it looks like a bottle, is this Aunt Jemima there? So it's pretty good, the fact that AI had to kind of look real close to figure out what it was. So certainly that works for me. I like the fact that you've kind of eliminated all the context surrounding it. And, I've never really even stopped to consider what this person really looks like on the bottle. So I think another neat thing about this is it asks us to consider that picture on its own, and for what it's worth, is it something that is how can is a good photo, I guess, or a good likeness of the person represented in that. So something to think about, and I think that it's really a neat way to draw attention to that. So really good job with this, Tori. I like that shot especially. And next up we have Elise's work. And so to break her cliche of shooting flowers, she actually shot the shadow of the flowers, which I think this is an awesome idea. Really, really beautiful image. I would really recommend that you guys try to do stuff like this. Just try to take pictures of the shadow of something. And in doing so, I think you can bring an entirely new perspective and vantage point to things. So really like this, Elise, a lot. And then your abstract image. Yeah, I guess this works. I mean, I can still kind of tell that it's flowers. So as you've probably seen with all of the other ones, maybe my answer to this again is just zooming in a little bit closer. And I think that becomes a little bit more abstract. If you had a macro lens, which is a very close-up lens, and maybe I think about just kind of taking some of the texture of the petals from one of these flowers. But again, meant to be a fun assignment, so just trying something new and different, and certainly it works for me, especially your first image that I showed. So good job with this. So next up we have Kate's work, and she is working with a sunflower here. I really love this shot. I like your decision to convert to black and white here. I think is really successful. Again, it kind of challenges the viewer to look a little bit more closely at the image and kind of figure out what it is. And once you do, there's kind of that reward of like, aha, how cool. So really good job here with this. I think super successful image. And then the image of the sunflower. Again, maybe I go in a little bit closer on this, and as we go closer in on it, I think especially we start to see the middle of the sunflower, which I think is something perhaps that we don't typically see. I know I've got a bunch of sunflowers growing in my yard, and I never really take the time to look at the middle of them. So in doing this, I think really breaks cliche and also makes it kind of an abstract image also. But nevertheless, good job with this, and I especially liked your first image there. And next up we have Sammy's work, and we've got an image of City Hall. And yeah, definitely, we see City Hall in maybe wider shots that include Niagara Square, typically from daytime. I especially like this image because our emphasis is kind of in this area here, particularly with that stoplight that's red. So I'm almost wondering if the shot even becomes, oops, let's undo that. Come on. Shot becomes something like this. And that's pretty interesting shot, and one where it would definitely take me a little while to actually even figure out that this was City Hall. So, like the idea there. And then your abstract image, just photographing light and putting, some architectural details in the background. And it almost looks like a ghostly exposure too, so it has sort of this mysterious feeling to it. So I like the idea of light painting here. Again, good job with your abstraction. So look forward to seeing what you have for us next assignment. So next up we have Jabril's images, and so we have, I'm presuming this first one is your cliched image. I mean, I'm not so convinced that this isn't a cliche here. If you're going to do this, maybe again I start thinking about zooming in here or doing, something like this or something like this, just kind of getting past even, doing something like this. I like the idea of including the advisory label in there. Like this, I think it feels and looks very much like your typical album cover or CD cover or record jacket if you want to go really old school on that. And then the second image here, you're focusing more on the reflection as the abstraction. Yeah, but, like I've said to everybody here, I think you need to get in a lot closer on this, maybe something like that. Then that becomes really abstract. And, I have absolutely no idea what this would have been, except for maybe the titling on the album here. So, maybe that's the way to go. And for everybody here, I'm really looking for you to probably get in a lot closer in all of the images. The other thing I even see here, now that I look at it, is even this wrinkle on the package here. Maybe focusing in on that. Then again, I'm not necessarily sure what it is, but the texture of it fascinates me, and that's what becomes visually interesting for it. So like the idea here, but not entirely convinced it's perfectly executed. again, just kind of think in terms of getting a little bit closer on both these things. And next up we have Maddie's work, and it's kind of interesting how she's broken the cliche of a selfie here by using the mirror and kind of capturing the reflection in the mirror. So again, I like that, and I imagine that you probably really had to work to position yourself just so to get that image of yourself taking the photo and the image of yourself. So again, like it, and like the approach on selfies. And then your abstract images. Yeah, I have no idea what this is, which is for this assignment a good thing. And I guess if we kind of zoom in here and zoom out, we might be able to figure out. But nevertheless, what it becomes then is really a study in pattern, and again, texture and even color here. So, I like it. And the whole idea of this assignment is to kind of loosen the reins and let you guys do what you want and be creative, and in the sense, it works. So, if you can, try and apply this to some of your other photography as everyone moves along through the rest of our modules here. Don't forget about abstraction, because especially when we are doing final projects, it can be a neat little detail to add to that project. So good job with this. So to wrap things up here, we've got Bailey's images. So for her first image that breaks cliche, we've got an image of coffee being made. And of course, the thing that I really love about it is this wonderful coffee drop that has been captured in midair. I suppose, again, that my instincts would, have me even go in a little bit closer and focus in on that. And it's funny because it almost looks like if we get closer and closer, there's sort of a reflection of a person in there. Maybe, maybe not. But anyhow, just giving you some more options and some different approaches on that. And then last but not least, your abstraction. Yeah, I really love this. And for me, a person who wears glasses and is pretty much blind when I don't have my glasses on, this kind of summarizes the world for me, and perhaps it does for you. Also, where you've got very clear vision coming through the glasses and very blurry vision in all of the areas outside of it. So really creative shot. I love this, a neat shot, and overall, really good job with this assignment. So for everybody, we will be moving on now to our midterm projects. As I've said in the module and some of the communications with everybody, this is really going to be your first major grade in this class. So please make sure that you are taking the time to think about this and try to apply all these skills that you've learned in the first 7 weeks of the class toward creating a good portfolio that ultimately you are going to build upon this portfolio and refine it for the rest of the semester. So you really want to make sure that you pick something that you enjoy doing and something that you can realistically do for the rest of the semester. So good luck to everyone on that, and look forward to seeing what you have for me in this upcoming week. Thanks.